fake ethics is saying it, you will of course give him a chance. And the problem with dictators and the problem with totalitarian fascists are they only need one chance. They only need one chance. Now I will give you a very important word of advice. Now I will give you a very important word of advice. Are we clear with regards to the concept of fascism? Because then I want to go to Italy and Germany and tell you how these two people will rise. Okay. Totalitarian fascists are neo-fascists. No, totalitarianism is the concept that does not exist today, but neo-fascism does it. They've changed their stance, they've changed their own understanding, but the basic recipe remains the same. What is new in? They are not anti-socialists, because anti-socialism is not an agenda which will push forward. Rather, they will talk about how they will protect the... See, so in every country, there's a different lobby which they actually talk about. So, for example, Trump represents the lobby which is extremely conservative, that Republican lobby. So, he's changing his agenda. He may not follow anything what the Republicans do, but he's aligning himself that way. Now, how neo-fascists are different? Again, fascism, what I am telling you, is an ideology which exists in the interwar period. Do you live today in 1923, 24, 25? This is the core concept. I put in the word neo means new. New fascism is the new way fascism. The best example of a neo-fascist is the Italian Prime Minister. She is a extremely conservative party member. She comes from an extreme right party of Italy. And that is a very dangerous thing. The last time somebody like that came, the Second World War happened. So, Meloni is actually a neo-fascist. Now, a very important word of advice, very, very important word of advice, is that first, don't use this word fascism loosely. Benjamin Netanyahu is a fascist, this is a fascist, that is a fascist. Don't do that. Because you really don't know what you're saying when it comes to calling them a fascist. Second thing is, when I will tell you what Hitler and Mussolini were, then you will realize calling modern leader fascist is actually disrespect to Hitler. There was only one Hitler, and there will always be one only Hitler. The modern nation state politicians, be Trump, Xi Jinping, Putin, they don't even come close to the shadow of Hitler. Hitler was a manipulator beyond exception. So by calling a person Hitler, you are basically doing a tawheen of Hitler. Hitler, Mussolini were very smart. Fascist leaders are extremely smart and very big manipulators. Just because in your understanding these things may apply to India, it doesn't mean that we are a fascist nation. So don't quote me articles which are half-baked or are basically based on a certain type of agenda. Fascism is not good. Neo-fascist trends will always be there because right parties will always be there. So by you saying all these criteria are yes for this country, you are basically underplaying these criteria. And you actually have no idea how bad fascists can be. The fact that you have today the power to call somebody a fascist means that you are not in a fascist state. Because when somebody said that Hitler's mustache is not good, they were literally picked up and burnt alive. So the fact of the matter that today your Article 19 is protected and you can go to the judiciary and you have the right to stand in the street to hold a board and say that this person is a fascist and you still come out alive is actually testament to the strength of the democracy of that country and even India. There will always be people who try to destroy democracy, but that is the task of you and me to identify them. Unfortunately, because UPSC asked you to study world history, that is why you are studying world history. 99.9999% of the Indian population does not know the difference between Hitler and Mussolini. And some of you may be thinking Mussolini is a woman, Mussolini is a man, he's a he. I get this question also. What did she do? It's not she, it's he. Benito Mussolini. So, unfortunately, the people who will vote for the people who will come to power have no idea what fascism is. So, sitting in this ivory tower and saying that this is a fascist, this is a fascist, this is a fascist, doesn't actually do anything. This point I made yesterday also in the webinar. Stop pushing your opinion in such a direction that you will get caught up somewhere. Because what will happen is in the interview, you will somehow use the word fascist. And then the whole interview will be firefighting. Because they will say, what do you mean by fascism? You will give them vague examples. You will then not be able to explain yourself. And that interview, which should have been the best experience of your life, now the board thinks that you are a fascist. So understand this point, that I don't say that fascism is good and bad. It is extremely bad. It is the worst thing which can ever happen to the whole system. But don't try to apply this half-baked on the modern economies and modern democracies. If this is clear, then I want to go to Italy and discuss. Now what we have to do is discuss rise of Mussolini and rise of Hitler and how the war started. 3 things I have to discuss in the next hour. Can I do that? Right parties will always exist. Conservative parties will always exist. Will they become neo-fascist is totally on the voter and on the leaders. Separate issue altogether. So please don't use these terms very, very loosely. Okay. Yes, this is specific to the interwar period. This is very specific to the period between 1919 to 1939. Please understand this point. Okay. Now I'm going to go to Italy and we will discuss the first country to become influenced by a fascist and the pioneer of the fascist ideology itself, which is Benito Mussolini. Can we do that? Okay. Now, there are factors which allowed for, there are factors that allowed fascism to rise. First of this was Treaty of Versailles. Now you will say, sir, if Italy was fighting on the part of Britain and France, why are you saying that the Treaty of Versailles is a factor for Italy to become fascist? And the reason for that is Italy took lot of loans. Italy lost 7 to 8 lakh people in the war also. The Italians paid a lot of attention to fighting this war because they were given a promise that they will get some Asian islands of the coast of Greece and their most important prized possession, which is the Trino Triste area. Trino Triste is a very fertile sector, Italian speaking, but was not given to them previously. So Britain and France said, we will give you this area, fight on our side. However, when the Treaty of Versailles happened, or Versailles happened, Britain and France said, what Trino Triste? Is it a type of cheese? No, we didn't promise you anything. You fought for your own understanding. And basically, Italy gained nothing out of the war. And more than that, lost a lot of resources and men, and national debt also rose quickly. So they had taken loans from the USA to fight. Now the consequence of this is Italians develop a severe sense of hatred towards the West, and they are angry, feel betrayed, and they want revenge. And this is basically the basic components of ultranationalism. So today, or in that moment, if I tell an Italian that let's all take one sword and go and chop the British, will the Italians do it? Will the Italians do it? Yes, they will. That is the level of hatred which they have. They felt betrayed, they felt angry. Killing a Britisher was national service. Why? Because you lost 7 lakh men. Not today, obviously not today. If you lost 7 lakh men and you have national debt which you have to pay back, and you gain not even 1 inch of land, you will be very, very angry as a nation. So this is why I called the Treaty of Versailles the worst treaty, because it did nothing for anyone else other than British and France. Now comes the second factor. The second factor is again very straightforward. With rising debt and economic impact of the war, and it's not related to Great Depression. It was much before the Great Depression that Italy became fascist. Socialism was rising in Italy. Private property was threatened. Workers' association in the model of Russian Soviets were developing. Strikes became common, and all of this only means one thing: industrialists feared a socialist revolution. And again you can see these are the factor or components for an anti-socialist to use the capitalists. So it is the fear of socialism which is important. Anybody has any issue in understanding this? This should be again a very straightforward, simple point, not difficult that way. Okay. Now comes the most interesting aspect, which is very bad democratic experience. See, after the war, Italy did become a democracy. But the worst thing which they could do to themselves, or the miscalculation or wrong decision which was taken in this constitution, which our Constituent Assembly very actively avoided, was going for proportional representation. for elections. See, India uses what is called the FTTP, which is first past the post system. Wherein if you have 4 candidates A, B, C, D, total number of votes is 100. This person gets 10, this person gets 20, this person gets 40. No, not 40. 1 second. 30. This person gets 40 and this person gets 30. Then this person will win the election. This person will win the election. If this person had, for example, it was A and B and it was 100, he had 49 and he had 51, then B would win. Basically, the number of votes you get should be more than the next candidate. First, past the post system. But if you look at it as per vote share, this system is actually problematic. Because though 40 people voted for you, 60 people did not vote for you. In the first case, 60 people did not vote for you, but still you came to power. This is called first past the post system. Proportional representation is that if there is 100 seats, A, B, C is there, the vote share decides how much seats you will get. Then 10 seats will go to A, 60 seats will go to B, and 30 seats will go to C. In this, everybody is represented by their proportional representation to vote share. But in a new democracy, proportional representation plus multi-party system, what will it lead to? If you have proportional representation and you have multi-party system, what will it lead to? No, it will lead to what we call as unstable governments. Then this is what happened in Italy. In multi-party system, what started to happen in Italy was no one got a majority. And the biggest issue was that this meant that there were very unstable governments, fragmented policy, which is called policy paralysis. Every 2 months, the prime minister needs to change. They were a constitutional monarchy. Every 2 months, their prime minister used to change. Now, if I am a country which came out of monarchy, and then I see that every 2 days there's a new prime minister, does it actually show to the people that democracy is stable? And this is what they came to a conclusion with. Democracy equals to instability, unfortunately. This is what they came to as a conclusion for. That only when you have one person ruling, then you can actually have stable government. It's technically not true. And a similarity between Germany and Italy is this only. Both Germany and Italy went with proportional representation. And now we should actually worship our Constituent Assembly that they did not choose in a country like India proportional representation. Because the same story would have happened here also. And very quickly, this complicated system would have destroyed India. So using first past the post system, people will give a lot of lecture on how it does not represent the mandate of the people. But for a country like India, which was coming out of 200 years of colonialism, it was the best system possible at that point of time. So the point is, the Treaty of Versailles has made people very, very angry. The democratic experience shows that democracy is useless. And there is a lot of socialistic trend which is rising. Yes, this is used for the president's election. Yes. Now, in this context, Benito Mussolini will rise. Can I talk about Mussolini? Everybody understands the context? Okay. Now, Benito Mussolini was actually a journalist. He was a journalist. And he forms his party called the Fascist Party of Italy. The word fascist actually comes from, this is the period between 1921 and 25. I'll give you the timeline. This party, the word fascist comes from the word fasces. Fasces is basically a symbol which is there in Italy. It's an old Roman symbol. What you see here, this is called a fasces, basically an axe. This is actually the symbol of power in Roman ideology and Roman symbolism. So that is why he called it the Fascist Party of Italy, or the fascist-based party of Italy. And that is why the word fascist comes out of this only, because Benito Mussolini was the one who pioneered it. Now, Mussolini was a very good orator. He used to know what to speak in front of the other person. And between 1921 and 1925, he will now start to do the drama which will make him what he is or what he will become later. First things first, Benito Mussolini will start to criticize the government. That the government, through his propaganda, he will argue that the government is useless, democracy is useless. He will also then go after the king, saying that the king is useless, but then when the king will become angry, he will change, no, my republic, my Italy will be constitutional monarchy. Then he will talk about religion in problematic aspects. So then Pope will become angry, he will change his stance on the Pope. Pope is the best. He will say that I am the only person who can give decisive, stable leadership to Italy. And I am the only one who can actually undo what the Treaty of Versailles did. But more than that, what Mussolini did was, he went to the capitalists of Italy and said that I am here to protect you. I am ready to protect you. You don't have to worry till I am alive. And therefore, he took a very strong anti-socialist stance very quickly. Now, how did he come to power is based on a very interesting story. Nobody is asking you that story, but you need to understand it. So, in the March of 1922, the Socialist Party of Italy called for a general strike. You would know what is a general strike, that the strike would be there across Italy. All workers will stop working. And this was to basically create pressure on the government for workers' welfare. And the Italian industrialists were very, very nervous about this general strike. Now, a random person called Benito Mussolini and his fascist party have not contested election, 0 position, 0 votes, and 0 seats. He will now do a call, and the call will be that if the government will not be able to stop this general strike, I will march to Rome and capture power. People said, sure, why not? And the government was in so much chaos that the government was not able to stop the general strike. Now, as soon as that happens, Mussolini will organize in October of 1922 his very famous walk or the march to Rome. Not more than 10,000 people. But at this point of time, there was a trend that every political party also had a paramilitary wing. And he had his what are called the black shirts. Mussolini, with his very crisp Hugo Boss uniform, his belts made out of Dior and Gucci, and his very well-made uniform in very good Italian textile, he walks to Rome. He marches to Rome with 10-15,000 people, some of them being armed also. Now he goes to the parliament and starts to scream that I am Mussolini, let the prime minister come out, I am here to capture power. Bahar nikal. That you were not able to stop the march to the general strike. You need to come out. I have been asked by the people of Italy to capture power with only handful of people standing behind it. So it's basically like all of us go to the Parliament of India today, and in front of the main gate of the Parliament, I start to scream that give me power. I don't believe in the government. We have been given by the mandate by the people of India to capture power. Now, the prime minister at this point of time is basically a person called Louis Facta. Facta will say, "Bhai, kaun hai tu? Who are you? Kaun hai bhai? Who are you that you are asking for? Go contest elections, win the elections. Once you've won the elections, you come and sit in the parliament, then change everything." Now, in all of this, the king, who is Victor Emmanuel II, he will, you don't have to write all of this down. He will, and everything is written in the PPT also, he will get to know that Mussolini is standing in front of the parliament. And he will send a message to Facta that I want to see the leadership of Mussolini, and I am using my executive power to nominate Benito Mussolini as the prime minister of this country. This is the power of a fascist and his propaganda. That the king thought that maybe the decisive leadership of Mussolini is needed. Let's give him a chance. Let's give him a chance. And without contesting elections and without actually doing anything, based on his march to Rome and his charisma and his propaganda and his way of speaking and his basic understanding, he very simply went to Rome, and the king nominated him as the prime minister. He said, let's done. This is the Nayak type scene wherein 2-3 months, how does he do? So now a fascist had entered the ranks. Now the first thing which Mussolini will do is now start to manipulate the laws. And what he does is he introduces a whole set of electoral reform which are called the Ecrebo laws. Ecrebo laws. He will now start to change the electoral role itself. He will remove the socialists, he will reduce the workers' representation, and now ask his party to contest the election. And because of being in power, he was able to manipulate the electoral roll in such a way that he actually was able to win a majority in the Italian proportional representation based parliament because of that level of manipulation. Now, as soon as he becomes the single largest party in the Italian parliament, now he will introduce further set of constitutional reform and say that the prime minister is not responsible to the parliament, he is only responsible to the king. And the prime minister in himself can also promulgate laws through decrees. So no need to legislate laws. Whilst doing this, 1924-25, he will keep on consolidating the power in the PM. And in 1925, he will proclaim himself as Deuce. Deuce means leader of the Italian Republic. And now a fascist showed how he changed from a prime minister to a dictator and how he was able to use his basic propaganda to capture power in a democratic country very easily. And this is basically the rise of Mussolini. True colors come out once they enter the parliamentary space. Can I repeat this story out of the PPT and we talk about Hitler then? Yes? Okay. Now, when we talk about fascism and Nazism, Italy, there were certain factors that allowed for fascism to rise. Italy had been promised the Trinotrist area from Austria, which was not given. It was given protectorate. It was told that it will be given protectorate status of Albania, not given. No Aegean islands given. 7 lakh people were dead, and nothing of these promised lands were given to Italy. Thereafter, there was also heavy wartime borrowing which they did. The US now needed to be repaid. Value of their currency lira will depreciate, cost of living will increase, and massive unemployment will spread throughout Italy in the 1920s. Add to it, there was a contempt which was rising, or a concept which was developing, that parliamentary system is useless. After the war, universal male suffrage and proportional representation was introduced in Italy. And now there were multiplicity of parties having no majority in the government, enter into very short-lived coalition governments and policy paralysis. Thereafter, Tulsi will do the questions once we've covered this section. Tomorrow, I will do the previous questions. Don't worry about the questions. Understand the concept. Then, there were also wave of strikes between 1919 and 1920, wherein, because Italy had embraced rapid industrialization after the war itself, there was a sense that there was a working class which was rising. But strong socialist parties and trade unions will be formed. Since 1870, they were industrializing, but accelerated during the First World War. Strikes became very often. So Russian, Soviet-like factory councils were developing, and now private property was under attack, and they were scared that private property would basically be threatened in that sense. It is in this context that Mussolini came with this agenda that I will give strong and stable leadership. He embraced the anti-socialist agenda very well, guaranteed law and order. He even received the support of wealthy businessmen, middle class, because he said, I will protect your property. Pope started to support him when he started to give conciliatory speeches. King supported him when he dropped his Republican agenda. And when he will form his National Fascist Party in 1921, he will have a very strong nationalist agenda and a corporatist agenda, which is to promote corporates and promote the government, the interest of the industrialists. And now, the way he captured power was that when there was a general strike attempt in the summer of 1922, the socialists called for a general strike, and fascists, and specifically Mussolini, threatened a march to Rome if the government is not able to stop it. On March to Rome, October 1922, once the government fails, he does the March to Rome. Poorly armed black shirts, his small paramilitary will go to Rome. Louis Facta will try to counter that demonstration. King Victor Emmanuel III, I said second, it is Victor Emmanuel III, will invite Mussolini to form a new government. As soon as he will form a new government, he will now introduce the Acrebo laws, which will give his party 2/3 majority automatically. Fascists will now win a majority by 1924, full majority. His opponents will be murdered or imprisoned, and there will be new changes in the constitution. The prime minister was now only responsible to the king. He can make his own laws. And by doing that, he had just changed the whole electoral landscape of Italy. And by 1925, May of 1925, he will call himself the Deuce of the Italian Social Republic with autocratic powers, therefore becoming the dictator. Acrebo laws are the laws which change the electoral system of Italy. I don't care how, but it did it. Not dude, deuce. Italian word for leader. Why Mussolini had his anti-socialist agenda? Obviously, if private property is threatened, then obviously he will try to go and ask the capitalists for money so that he can make those uniforms which he used to wear very expensive. And also, he needed power and money of the capitalists to show to the king and show to the people that he had the power to rule Italy. Are we clear? Are we clear with regards to the Italian story? Nobody is going to ask you how did Mussolini come to power, but I'm telling you this because I want to show you something. How fascists break democracy from within. They enter democracy to break democracy from within. Are we clear with Italian story? Yes, no? Yes. Okay. Now we go to Germany. Now Germany is a little bit later. Palak, I don't know what you are confused about. You need to tell me what you're confused about. There is Great Depression, there is socialism, there is Hitler, there is Mussolini, and we have discussed Mussolini, how he came to power. Fascists have these basic characteristics. We've discussed that by looking at Hitler and Mussolini and coming up with basic characteristics. And this is the thing. They changed the laws. I don't care what they did. He captured power. That's it. So that is the point. So there are multiple stories together. They're happening together. That is the issue. Great Depression is now going to become the background for Germany. We are moving back and forth in time. That is the basic point. So war is over, Great Depression happens, but even before that, Mussolini has captured power. Now, Germany. The German story is a little bit later, but Germany, when it lost the war, it went and wrote a new constitution. And that constitution was written at the city of Weimar. And that is why the republic which came into existence is called the Weimar Republic. Because it is based on the Weimar constitution. Weimar is a city in Italy. Now, why did Vikram III become so fond? Because he thought that he had the power to have a stable government. That is the propaganda, that is the power of a charismatic leader. Now, Weimar Republic from the beginning itself started to struggle because Germany had a war reparation clause. Germany had too many economic issues. So the basic point is Germany was in a very bad state. So the Weimar Republic struggled from the beginning itself. Now, if I add to this the fact that the Treaty of Versailles happened, I don't need to tell you why the Germans would hate this treaty. The Germans hated the clauses of the treaty, and more than that, Germany was humiliated beyond exception. And the biggest thing is right parties, ultra nationalists existed as soon as war was over. So Treaty of Versailles is one of the biggest factors why Hitler was able to do what he did. But the political landscape of Germany was also very complicated. In Germany, there were three types of parties. One was called the SPD, the other one was called the KPD, and the other ones were called extreme right parties. See, KPD means Communist Party of Germany, Deutschland, that is by the D. This is the Socialist Party of Germany. And this is basically the conservative ultra-nationalists. Now, which will be more radical, KPD or SPD? This will be more radical. SPD or KPD? KPD. This is extreme left and this is extreme right. So you can see both extremes existed. Both extremes existed. Die Deutschland, they call themselves Deutschland, that is why D. These are German spellings and their acronyms. This is the party, SPD, which was the neutral democratic one. And they are the ones who were also Weimar Republic majority leaders were basically SPD leaders. Now, what is extreme right and left? Extreme left means they want to topple the government. A very good example of the extreme left would be Naxals. Naxalism is extreme left. So think of them like that. Extreme right would be ultra nationalists, such as Hitler. So the point is, this is a recipe for chaos. Both exist in Germany. Now we have the Treaty of Versailles. We have the concept of the SME. You can do one thing. You can push the German spellings of KPD, SPD. Then they will actually realize what they actually mean. So when you will Google it, you will get KPD bracket German spelling. Just copy it and paste it in the chat section. Thank you for that. Okay. Now, Treaty of Versailles is an issue. Second is that at the end of the day, they also did the blunder of having proportional representation in Weimar Constitution. And this meant that again people came to the conclusion democracy equals to instability. Third is that socialism already existed in Germany as SPD and KPD. So thank you so much for this. The SME has pushed, you see, the names. The Kommunistische Partei Deutschlands, KPD. The Sozialistische Partei Deutschlands, which is SPD. So you see the word KS, they come from that. This is the full forms of these are the German spellings acronyms. Now, last but not the least is here Great Depression will play a very important role. Now, can I discuss how does Hitler come to power? Factors you see are more or less the same. Okay. Now you see, in Germany, even before Hitler tried to capture power, both left and right tried to do it. The first event which happened is called the Spartacist uprising. In this, the KPD and extreme left tried to capture power. But what happened was the right blocked it. Then the Kapp push happened, in which the extreme right tried to capture power and the left stopped them. And it is in this Kapp push that Hitler was also there. Hitler had fought in the First World War and he was an extreme right personality, but he was there in the Kapp push. He will get arrested also. And that is why before he became what he was in the jail for 3 years. Now, these two episodes tell us one thing or show us something, that would it be right to say that neither the extreme left or neither the extreme right can capture power? Because both are undercutting each other. Yes? So neither Spartacist uprising became true or neither Kapp push became true. So Hitler learned from this. And Hitler, what he did, Adolf Hitler, what he did was that he came up with an idea, which is a middle path. And the middle path was he took over as president of a party called the Germans Workers' Party, which his father was a member of. And he will then rename the party as National Socialist Democratic Party of Germany, which is NSDAP or NAZI. The word Nazi is basically the acronym for his party. The Nazi Party it was called. Nazi Party it was called. So Hitler has realized something, that he should not take either path. But now Hitler, you see, is arguing that he's a nationalist also, right? He's a socialist also, which he had nothing as a streak, and he's democratic also. So it's basically a tiger calling himself a vegetarian. That I am a nationalist also, I'm a socialist also, I'm a democratic personality. And Hitler could see that this manipulation could work. Now, what Hitler did is, now he's how he came to power. Adolf Hitler used the distress of the Great Depression well. So when the Great Depression will hit Germany 1929-32 period, his Nazi party became more and more popular, because the government was struggling to even pay the army and the police any form of salaries. His Nazi party will offer employment also. The Nazi party had a very important wing which is called the SA. SA, the full form is basically Sturmabteilung. Don't have to remember it. Sturmabteilung is basically like the black shirts or the red guard. They are the military wing of the Nazi party. And what it used to do was used to give a stipend or some amount of money to its members. And people would rather become a part of the SA to actually become the part of the German army. That is the popularity which Hitler has. Hitler again is saying, what I will do as soon as I will come to power, I will defy the clauses of the Treaty of Versailles. I will do and undo everything. And his main ideology was called Lebenstraum. This word is a German word which means living space. So what Hitler used to argue was that the Germans are suffocated. We live in this small country. The Germans across the European sector want to come together. We want more living space. Lebensraum. So he used to say that I will expand Germany in such a way that we as Germans are not suffocated after the Treaty of Versailles. So Hitler is making all the right noises which he needs to make by saying that you join my SS to Mabdalun, I'll give you employment. I will make sure that Germany becomes great again and Germany is able to defy all the Treaty of Versailles clauses. I will also try to go and have a union with Austria because they are Germans at the end of the day. All Germans in Europe will be protected. And Hitler's popularity became so much that when in 1931 and 32, he fought elections. Hitler actually fought the elections. He fought elections and the Nazi party at one point of time was also the single largest party. But as soon as the Great Depression started to ease a little bit, he started to also lose seats. What does this tell us? If Hitler loses seats as soon as the Great Depression eases, what does it show? What is the correlation here? What is the correlation? The more things become better, the less people are interested in the propaganda of Hitler. So Hitler was using the fear of the socialists and also the distress of the Great Depression to say, I am the solution. But if there will be no problem, then what are you a solution of? So very simply, his single largest party tag was important for him to show that he was an important leader. Now, what Hitler will do is that by the then president Hindenburg was one of the most celebrated generals of the Germans, and he became the president also. He will nominate Hitler as the chancellor. Hitler as the chancellor. So Hitler will basically become the prime minister of Germany in 1932 period. However, the ease of or the Great Depression is easing. Now Hitler needs to do something. Can I tell you how he will capture power? How he will capture power? He needs to do two things. Okay. These are not in chronological order, but the first thing which Hitler does was that he needed to undercut the constitutional executive positions. So first thing what happened was, fortunately for Hitler, during his rise, Hindenburg will die. Whilst he was chancellor, Hindenburg will die. And now you see what type of drama Hitler is going to do. At Hindenburg's funeral, whilst the rain was pouring on his uniform, having no umbrella, standing in the rain, Hitler, the most prolific orator of the world, now gave a very emotional speech, and he said that I cannot imagine a Germany without Hindenburg. And I think that if we replace Hindenburg with a new president, it is the ultimate disrespect to Hindenburg. He was our leader. He was the greatest general. And I think we should dissolve the position of the president, because there can be no one other than Hindenburg as the president. He also says, why stop here? Let us also dissolve the position of chancellor. Let's dissolve these positions, because these are moh maya. Maya hai. I am not hungry for power. Call me my Führer. Call me my Führer. And Führer means my leader. Führer word is my leader. So Hitler was never called chancellor, was never called president. He was called Führer, leader. So now what Hitler has done is, in all this soap opera type Kasauti Zindagi ka drama, what he's actually done is that he has in one stroke dissolved both the executive positions, and he's now become the Führer. But still, the task is not complete. He needs to capture power. And the socialists are becoming more and more relevant and becoming more and more powerful. And in order to capture power, he needed to do one very important thing. And that moment in German history is called the turning point, which is called the Reichstag fire of 1933. Can I discuss this? And we can stop with Hitler coming to power and trying to take Czechoslovakia. We can do that? Okay. Now, Now, Hitler, by the time he becomes chancellor, he has two very important organizations. So you would know this also, that Hitler had three very important deputies. Hitler had three very important deputies: Himmler, Göring, and Goebbels. Now, basically, these three represented three important institutions which were there within the Nazi party. Hitler had one thing called the SA, Sturmabteilung, which is under Himmler, which is basically a paramilitary wing, his own army. And he also had what is called the SS. SS is called Sturmstaffel. Sturmstaffel is like how you today have the SPG, which is basically his personal security. Once he will become a totalitarian leader, he will also have one more body. Anybody can tell me the third body which he created after becoming the Führer? Come on, you know it. SA is his paramilitary wing. SS is his personal security. Sturmabteilung, Sturmstaffel. Come on, you know the organization which he created, which was basically under Goebbels. It's not the army. Come on, Nazi party already you know. Not Weimar, not SPD. Have you ever heard about something called Gestapo? Gestapo is basically his secret police, like the KGB and the CIA. So, three institutions he will create: SA, SS, Gestapo. Gestapo will be under Goebbels, Göring will control SS, Himmler will control SA. Now, very, very, very straightforward. As the SM is also pushed, the SA was the assault division of the Nazi party, and the SS was the protective agent. Agent means his own paraphernalia. Now, what is the Reichstag fire? Now, Hitler needs to capture power. Now, what he did was, he planned a very interesting thing. Hitler's SS will kill an SPD leader, will kill a KPD leader, and they will very categorically kill a Jew who was an SPD leader. So the SS will kill these three people, and Hitler is going to ask the SA and the SS to take these three bodies and plant them in the Reichstag. Reichstag basically is the word for parliament, in the German parliament. And then he will ask the SA to pour gasoline and petrol and burn the Reichstag. So in a very dramatic fashion, in 1933, the German parliament was burning with the SPD, KPD and the Jewish SPD leader, where he was trying to link Bolshevism with Judaism, or what we call Judaism. We'll discuss the Jewish connection later. And these bodies were planted. Now, overnight, the whole parliament will burn. And in the morning, Hitler will wake up and say, what national calamity has happened to Germany? Who are these enemies of the state who have tried to burn the institution of democracy? Mera ghar hai wo. They have burnt the institution of democracy in Germany. I will not let these people, this temple of democracy, to be burnt by the enemies of the state. He says, I will send my own personal guard, the SS, to do an inquiry and check who did it. The SS will go very conveniently, take out the three bodies and show it to the media. The SPD leader and their ID cards were with them. So now Hitler says, the socialists are an enemy of the state. These KPD leaders, these SPD leaders, these Jews are the problem of this nation. He had nothing personal with Jews. He just needed to link Judaism with Bolshevism so that he could capture what he called Jewish enterprises to give Germans employment. Now, very simply, Reichstag fire, Hitler will now say, I will cleanse this society of all people who are against the nation of Deutschland, of Germany. And very categorically, based on the Reichstag fire, he will kill most of his opponents, kill most of the SPD leaders and KPD leaders. He purged the whole society. However, even after doing this, when in 1933 the election happened, still Hitler lost seats. And then Hitler realized that he needs to do something and now push the issue. And what he will do is, while sitting in his home, he will ask the SA and the SS to now surround the parliament, which was now meeting in an opera called the Kroll Opera. And whilst doing that, he said, capture power, and the SA and the SS will make the parliament pass what is called the enabling laws, which will make Hitler dictator for life. And from 1933 to 39 onwards, which we will discuss tomorrow, he will now start to push in his own agenda that will in turn lead to the Second World War to start. So this is the dramatic way in which Hitler captured power. There's much more nuance to this. There's much bigger other elements also. But this is enough to understand how he was a basic, he's a very good manipulator. He's a very good, what we call as assessor of situations. So the point is, I'll read this portion out from the PPT and then we'll break for today. Germany moved towards defeat in the First World War. That in turn led to shift in public opinion. The king had to flee. The SPD leader Friedrich Ebert became the first president of the Weimar Republic, written in the Weimar Constitution in the Weimar city. And they took a parliamentary system in which you have a president and a chancellor. Now, the factors for the rise of Nazism are linked to the Treaty of Versailles, which had humiliated the Germans properly, and nationalist propaganda was against them quite a lot. They also had a lack of respect for democracy generally in Germany, because they used to believe that the army is the true source of power. And in the First World War, the army was betrayed by its leaders. On the other hand, in the background, there will be two. What happened to the loan? Hitler will stop paying the loan itself. Now, there will be two incidents in which the left and the right will try to capture power, wherein in the Spartacist uprising, the communists will try to seize power, but that will not happen. In the Kaap push, the right will try to capture power, but the left will block it. And therefore, it was very clear that left and right can't capture power until and unless Hitler changes the nature of the German Worker Party to the NSDAP. Then the Great Depression will hit. And once the government will go into chaos, and literally the government will not be able to manage the people and even give them basic salaries, now Hitler will find the position and his understanding to be very favorable. In that context, the Nazi party will start to win the elections. And by 1932, Nazi party became the single largest party in Germany. And this made Hindenburg more and more inclined to make Adolf Hitler and his propaganda and his charisma to become the chancellor, and he will become the chancellor. The Nazi party used a very specific type of agenda. Yes, all of them, SAS, Gestapo, formed by Hitler. He said that I will bring in national unity. I will give everybody employment, full employment. He said that we are working against these enemies of the state, these socialists. That is an anti-socialist agenda. He said that he will overthrow the Treaty of Versailles and bring all Germans under one rule. He's also the one who had an essay which basically gave people employment to show how Hitler was talking about employment. And there was a lot of difference between these very non-charismatic SPD leaders and Hitler, who used to hold a lot of power in the society. The fear of the communist revolution and his own persona allowed him to become what he was. Now, how he actually captured power was the Reichstag fire in 1933 March. Huge fire will be there. Polarized elections will happen. He will blame the communists and the Jews of having doing that. However, the SA will purge the opponents, and the state apparatus will be used to kill and consolidate power. However, even after that, Hitler was not fully consolidating power, and there were seats which were being lost. So the Nazi army will surround the Kroll Opera, and enabling laws will be passed, which will make Hitler the dictator he became, which in turn will lead to him to start the Second World War, which I will discuss with you tomorrow. But before I do that, I want to just discuss one very basic point with you. The stories of Hitler and Mussolini are immaterial. What really matters to you is that how these dictators are using democracy to destroy democracy. When we come back tomorrow, I will talk about the policy of appeasement, which was used by Hitler quite a lot. A policy of appeasement which was followed by the British and the French, and that was used by Hitler. We'll talk about the Second World War, and we'll also talk about the Cold War politics. Today, what I have established is all the causes of the Second World War. Treaty of Versailles, Great Depression, fragile democracies, rise of Hitler, Mussolini, fascism, and how democracy was threatened in the interwar period. So is the interwar period clear? If it is, then we'll talk about Austria, Czechoslovakia, Poland, and then the Second World War. Yes? Everybody, totally clear? Perfect. Perfect. So tomorrow we have class. Yes, we meet at 6 a.m. tomorrow and we finish Second World War and Cold War politics. And remember, Tuesday is your doubt session. Do send the questions to the IS live in that sense. Thank you. I will see you tomorrow 6 a.m. Don't be late. And this was already as part of our design of our course when it came to Saturday class. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. I hope you found these